Anyone who's ever lived like a bastard knows, no matter how beautiful someone is, you eventually get tired of the face. Right after the college entrance exams ended, I pulled out a wad of cash and threw it at Julie in front of our entire class. She was the school's top student, the campus beauty, the girl everyone expected me to end up with. But I smirked, leaned back in my chair and said, "I'm done playing around, let's just call it quits." Gasps echoed across the room. Some boys looked at me like I'd lost my mind, others waited, eyes gleaming, expecting a slap across my face. But Julie didn't say a word. She crouched down in her neat skirt, picked up each bill one by one, and tucked them back into the envelope. Her fingers trembled slightly. She stood up straight, eyes fixed on the money instead of me, and whispered, "Okay." I didn't look back as I walked out the classroom door. A week later, I boarded a flight to the other side of the world, alone, quiet, no grand exit, no goodbyes. While everyone else celebrated their youth and freedom, I stepped into a cold hospital room, handed over my passport, and signed consent forms with trembling hands. Diagnosis: lymphoma, stage 2, aggressive. I never told anyone. The first round of chemotherapy hit harder than expected. I spent nights curled over a steel toilet bowl, retching until I couldn't breathe, clutching onto the sides as if they could hold my body together. Nurses came and went like ghosts. Nobody stayed, nobody called, and honestly, I didn't want them to. One evening, I caught my reflection in the mirror, hair clinging to the sides of my face, eyes sunken, jawline too sharp for an 18-year-old. I opened my wallet and stared at a photo tucked behind my old student ID. Julie. Asleep on the school desk, cheek pressed to a prep book, sunlight falling on her lashes. I'd taken it secretly. She'd never known. I rumpled the photo, then smoothed it out again with shaking fingers. I kept it. 10 years passed like a fever dream. The cancer went into remission, then it came back. Like it always does. When I returned home, I was 30 pounds lighter, bald again, and registered under a false name for a new clinical trial. The hospital assigned me a room in a clean, modern ward. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want to know. I just wanted to be anonymous, unseen. The nurse wheeled me into a private room. "The lead attending will come by to go over your file. She's very experienced." I nodded absently, fiddling with my phone. The door opened. I didn't look up at first, just heard the click of heels, the soft rustle of a white coat, the sound of a pen tapping against a clipboard. "New patient in the study group," the nurse said. "Name's Jamie, he already signed the consent." My fingers froze, her voice came calm. "Understood." I looked up. It was her, Julie. Her hair was longer now, neatly tied back. She wore a white coat embroidered with Dr. Julie Hahn, hematology. Her gaze passed over me like I was just another case file. I blinked, swallowed, looked away quickly. She said nothing. Didn't flinch, didn't react. She moved to the next bed. The moment passed. I exhaled. Maybe she really didn't recognize me. After all, I was thinner, older, half dead and wearing a mask. But as she stepped out of the room, she paused for the slightest second at the doorway. Her hand brushed the frame. She turned her head slightly, just slightly, and whispered, "I recognized you the moment I walked in. Back in high school, I was exactly the kind of person everyone either wanted to be or wanted to punch in the face. Rich, lazy, rebellious, a golden boy with a bad attitude, and too much money to care. My father made his name in real estate, my mother owned art galleries she barely visited, I was their only child, chauffeured to school in a black sedan with tinted windows, always wearing the latest sneakers, always late, always half awake in class with earbuds in and my desk cluttered with expensive pens I never used. Julie. She sat in the front row. Always early. Uniform crisp, hair neatly tied back, face bare, head buried in practice books. She brought plain rice and vegetables for lunch, always packed in a faded bento box. Quiet, efficient, brilliant. Teachers adored her, students whispered about her behind her back. They called her Ice Julie. We didn't talk, why would we? She was the top student in class. I was ranked third from the bottom. We didn't breathe the same air. Until our homeroom teacher got tired of my grades and decided to throw a Hail Mary. "Jamie, you're switching seats," he said one day. From now on, you sit next to Julie." The class gasped like he'd just announced I'd be rooming with a nun. First week, she didn't even look at me, just solved mock papers from dawn to dusk. I kept poking her arm with my pen. She ignored me. Second week, I saw her at the bookstore. While other guys tried to impress her with roses and handwritten letters, I bought a full set of prep books, math, chemistry, and a special edition of 5 Years of College Entrance Exams, 3 Years of Practice. The cashier raised an eyebrow. "These are all for you?" "No," I said. "They're for someone who might actually use them." I left them on her desk the next morning, no note, no name. She opened the bag, blinked once, and kept reading. Didn't even say thank you. But that evening, she moved one of her math answer sheets to the edge of the desk, facing me. By mid-semester, we'd developed a rhythm. She solved, I copied. She whispered formulas, I pretended to understand, but every time she glanced my way, I felt that familiar electric jolt. Her only flaw, she was poor. My mother didn't say it directly, but when she found out I was spending time with the scholarship girl, she started locking up the credit card drawer. My grades began to rise. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was catching up to something that actually mattered. Julie wasn't warm, she wasn't chatty, but she was steady, reliable. She never judged me when I didn't get things, never mocked me when I gave up halfway through a math problem, just silently pointed at the line again. The day I kissed her was her birthday. She had just finished solving a question on differential equations. Her hands were covered in pencil dust. I remember leaning in and brushing my lips against hers before I could stop myself. She looked up at me with wide, startled eyes. "What do you mean by that?" she whispered. I panicked. "Isn't it obvious? Be my girlfriend." She bit her lip. Her ears turned pink, and then she whispered, "Okay." After that, everything changed. I woke up early, took notes, got to school before her just to hold the door open. The other guys stared like I'd been possessed. And maybe I had. Because for the first time, I wasn't just living, I was hoping. In less than a year, I jumped 100 points across subjects. With my new scores, I could apply to any university in Beijing. I even circled one on the map and told her, "This is where I'm going, what about you?" She pointed to a smaller school, still in Beijing. I drew a red line connecting both campuses. "Shortest distance between 2 points," I said. "Straight line, will be 15 minutes apart." She smiled, a small, rare smile. "I'm happy." Then came the checkup. It was routine, some school policy, but the doctor frowned when he felt my neck. "Enlarged lymph nodes," he muttered. "We'll run some tests." The results came back a week later, the whole page lit up red like a Christmas tree. "Stage 2, it's aggressive, you'll need to start chemo right away." I asked him, "How long do I have if I don't treat it?" 6 months, he said. "Maybe less." I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't tell anyone, not my parents, not my friends, not Julie. I made a decision in silence. She had her future, her dreams, her application letters lined up like soldiers in her bag, and me, I was just a detour she couldn't afford to take. The day I broke up with her, I waited until everyone was watching. I made sure the cash was crumpled, made sure my voice was cold, made sure it hurt. She didn't cry, she just picked up the money, said okay, and walked out of my life. I left the country that night. The next few years were a blur of sterile white rooms, masked nurses, blood draws, injections, nausea, and silence. I became a ghost of myself. Now, 10 years later, sitting in a hospital bed again, I stare at the door every time it opens. Julie walks in like clockwork, calm, efficient, still beautiful. She checks the charts, discusses medications with the team, never once looks at me, but my heart still races. Every single time. Because when you've loved someone in silence for 10 years, even a glance can feel like a scream. And now she's back, flawless white coat, polished voice, nameplate shining like it owns the world. I should be happy she's doing well. Instead, I wonder if she still thinks of that kiss, or if I'm just another ghost she learned to forget. I convinced myself she didn't recognize me. It made things easier. Every time Julie entered the room, white coat swaying, clipboard in hand, I'd pretend to be busy with my phone or listening to the shopping host blaring through my earbuds. I kept my voice down, avoided her eyes. If I said less, I could preserve the illusion that I was invisible, that she didn't know who I was, that she didn't hate me. But little things chipped away at the lie. First, a nurse delivered anti-nausea meds without me asking. Lead physician requested it, she said. I blinked. Julie? The nurse smiled. Dr. Han's careful, she personally filled the request. Second, my treatment schedule. It lined up too perfectly with her rounds, not her assistants, not the interns, her, every time. Then, during a routine drip, another nurse leaned over with a grin. You're lucky, Mr. Jamie, not everyone gets Dr. Han's personal attention. I shrugged, keeping my tone light. She seems professional. She's more than that, the nurse whispered. She's engaged to the director's son, Joshua. He's got a PhD from the States, perfect match. Engaged. The word echoed in my head like a shot. I didn't ask for details, didn't need them. The nurse moved on. My chest tightened like someone had shoved their fist through my ribcage and clenched. Joshua. I hated him immediately, not because he was rich or brilliant or well-connected, but because she said yes to him. The next morning, my best friend from high school, Leo, the old class monitor, called me up. Heard you were back in the city, how's the treatment? I said, bearable. He said, we're all in town, we'll stop by, stir-fry at your place, no excuses. I wanted to say no, but I couldn't, so I gave them my address. A few hours later, my small apartment lit up with laughter and clutter, classmates I hadn't seen in a decade crammed around my kitchen counter, peeling garlic, washing spinach, trying to recreate that high school energy in the middle of my sterile post-chemo cave. I wore my best wig, the one that didn't itch too much. I even cracked a few jokes. And then the doorbell rang. I froze. Leo wiped his hands and opened the door. Julie, someone shouted behind him, finally made it. My hands went cold. No one told me she'd been invited. She stepped inside, a plastic bag of fruit in one hand, her shoes in the other, her gaze scanning the room until it landed on me. Go with clear broth, she said to no one in particular. Too much spice will wreck his stomach. Someone laughed. You hear that? Dr. Han says no spicy base. She handed the fruit to someone in the kitchen and sat down calmly on the sofa, across from me. I panicked and reached into my pocket, pulling out a face mask, fumbling with the straps, pretending like that would somehow make me disappear. She stared. I didn't look up. Then, snap. The sound of water spinach stems being trimmed. Julie's voice, soft but sharp. I already recognized you. What's the point of the mask now? Silence spread like oil on water. My fingers trembled. I thought you didn't. I stopped mid-sentence. She replied, we're not close, no need for greetings. I nodded weakly and reached for a glass of water. My hand shook so hard it tapped against the rim twice. I managed to mumble, would you like some? She said, not thirsty. Ice. I sank into the couch, mind racing. Did she know everything? Did she guess why I left, or did she think I just ghosted her for fun? Before I could speak again, Leo's voice rang out from the kitchen. Hey Jamie, we're out of paper towels. On it, I said, grateful for the excuse. I stood quickly and moved to the cabinet. The drawer jammed, I yanked. Clunk. A small photo frame slid from the top and crashed to the floor. Face down. My heart stopped. Before I could bend over, Julie had already picked it up. The light behind her cast her face in shadow. I couldn't read her expression. But I could feel the change in the room. The weight of her silence. She was staring at the photo. I didn't need to see it to remember. It was the picture I'd taken of her sleeping during finals week, sunlight filtering through the window, her fingers curled near her cheek, hair falling loose. That moment had lived in my wallet longer than any ID. I said softly, thanks. She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the frame. Then they lifted, narrowed, and scanned the room, landing on the wall behind me. I turned. Pictures. So many pictures, of high school, of me, of Leo, of Julie. Some were framed, others tacked up like a makeshift timeline. She whispered, "This is your ex-wall?" I tried to smile. Kinda. Nostalgia, I guess. She pointed to one with Leo's arm around my shoulders. "So, you dated him too?" I laughed awkwardly. Yeah. Dated everyone." Her stare could have shattered glass. My mask of humor fell apart. Then Leo walked in, holding a ladle. "You guys?" He stopped mid-sentence, instantly sensing the tension. Julie turned sharply. "Put the frame back, and wipe your hands." She walked to the door, grabbing her bag. "Julie, wait," Leo called. She didn't stop. "Something came up at the hospital," she said. "I have to leave." "Dinner's just starting," he said. "We haven't even—" She paused at Todd. He threshold, glanced at me one last time. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. She scoffed, sharp and bitter. "I'm just the unwanted ex, why would I stay?" Click. The door shut. And she was gone. The next day, my body gave out. I'd been holding on too tight, pretending the food tasted fine, pretending the spinning in my head was normal, pretending the pain in my spine wasn't blinding. But that evening, while brushing my teeth, I collapsed. My knees hit the cold tile, and the sound of retching echoed so violently I didn't recognize it as my own. I clutched the edge of the toilet, sweat pouring down my neck. David, my roommate and one of the only constants in my life the last few years, knelt beside me, worry etched into every line on his face. "Jamie," he said, holding out a wet towel, "you look like hell. I'm calling the doctor." I grabbed his wrist and croaked, "Don't." "Julie's your attending," he said. "She needs to know." "No," I said through clenched teeth. "She doesn't. Be grateful she doesn't remember me. If she finds out who I am, she'll order 100 rounds of chemo just for revenge." A voice cut through the air behind us. "Who told you need 100 rounds?" Everything froze. David slowly turned. I stayed frozen in place, head bowed over the toilet. Julie stood in the doorway, arms crossed, white coat hanging loosely, expression unreadable. "Dr. Han," David said quickly. "Jamie's not feeling great, he's throwing up every—" "It's a common side effect," Julie said, calm as ever. "If it gets worse, we'll adjust his meds." I didn't move. Didn't breathe. She was behind me, still watching, still silent, still, too close. She turned and walked out without another word. I didn't even have the strength to lift my head, but my stomach twisted, not from chemo this time, but shame. She had heard everything. That night, a nurse came in with an injection and casually said, "You must know Dr. Han, huh?" I mumbled, "No, why?" Strange. She usually doesn't micromanage meds, but today, she went herself to get approval for your anti-nausea prescription, said she. "Reviewed your case file personally." I froze. So she hadn't forgotten. Of course she hadn't. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. Pale skin, eyes sunken. A man that barely looked like who I used to be. My name, Jamie Lee, was printed in bold letters right on the placard at my bedside. Why did I ever think she wouldn't recognize me? Later, David muttered, "So, Dr. Han's engaged to the director's son, huh?" I didn't answer. "And she's already a full attending at her age, that's insane." "She took the fast track," the nurse chimed in. "MD PhD, graduated early, people say she's brilliant." When the nurse left, David raised a brow. "She's kind of a legend, huh? No wonder you liked her." I didn't laugh. I just kept rubbing the smudges off my phone screen, over and over. Eventually, Julie stopped coming by entirely. She sent interns, residents, assigned her assistants to handle the charts. But I still heard her name. In hallway chatter. In lab discussions. Sometimes, in my dreams. After a week of silence, I was discharged temporarily during a chemo break. David helped me get into a cab. I barely spoke the entire ride. The city looked different now, everything bright, shiny, loud. Like it had moved on without me. When I got home, the apartment felt colder than usual. I unpacked slowly, one hand clutching the counter for balance. Then my phone rang. "Leo." Jamie, you still in the city? Yeah. We're all meeting up for dinner this weekend, reunion kind of thing. I said nothing. He paused. Julie's coming too. I exhaled. All right. That night, I lay in bed with my arm over my eyes, thinking about the past, about our classroom, her precise handwriting, that tiny laugh she'd make when she solved something difficult, her dream of studying mathematics. The way her face would light up at the mention of formulas I never understood. She used to say numbers made more sense than people, and now, she was saving people instead of solving equations. Why medicine? I didn't sleep. The next evening, I found her. In the lab, surrounded by patient charts. Julie, I said softly. She looked up slowly, her face was calm, blank, unreadable. I need to ask you something, I said. She didn't speak. Why didn't you study math? She blinked once, then said, why do you care? I hesitated. Back then, that was your dream. She didn't look at me, just kept flipping through the papers. I took a step closer. Julie, did you change your major because of me? She slammed the folder shut. I flinched. You thought I wouldn't find out? She said, voice quiet but sharp. That you could throw money at me and vanish, and that'd be the end of it? I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. I waited outside your house for a week, she said. Admissions officers came to your door. Your parents said you'd gone abroad. Julie. I called Leo, over and over. He wouldn't tell me anything. You ghosted me, Jamie, like I meant nothing. I was sick, I said weakly. I thought, pushing you away would protect you. She stared at me. Don't insult me, she whispered. I didn't want you to waste your life on me. I thought you'd move on, do what you wanted. And you think I wanted this? She held up her ID badge. You think I wanted to sit in on end-stage consults and explain to 5-year-olds that they're dying? Tears filled her eyes, but she blinked them back. I gave up everything for you, because I thought I could help you, because I loved you. I know, I said, voice cracking. And you humiliated me, publicly, like I was trash. I'm sorry. She turned. I didn't know how else to protect you. I was 18. I thought dying alone would hurt less than dragging you down with me. Julie looked back at me. Tears streamed down her face, but her voice was steady. I didn't need protection, Jamie. I needed you. I reached for her hand, but she pulled it back. I'm sorry, I said again. For everything. For the money, for the silence, for not trusting you. The silence stretched. Julie wiped her face, turned back to her files, her hands trembled. I can't do this, she said quietly. Not right now. I nodded. I'll wait, I said. She looked at me, eyes red, lips trembling. I'm not asking you to, she whispered, but she didn't tell me to go either. 3 days passed without a word from Julie. I tried to focus on my new meds, tried to joke with the nurses, tried to look less like a man circling the drain, but each hour dragged like a weight tied to my chest. Then Helen showed up. She was still the same, sharp ponytail, no-nonsense attitude, eyes that saw through your excuses before you even made them. She tossed a bag of fresh fruit on my bedside table and sat on the edge of the visitor's chair like it offended her. I assume you're still being stupid, she said. I gave a weak laugh. Still breathing, if that counts. She leaned forward. You know how you got into this research trial? I blinked. Random draw? Application? I assumed my doctor abroad submitted. Nope, she cut in. Julie sent it, through me. My breath stopped. I was the middleman, Helen added. She couldn't reach you, so she had me send it anonymously. Your acceptance into the trial wasn't luck, it was her plan. I stared at the IV drip beside me, the bag of fluid swaying gently. All this time, I thought fate was messing with me. But Julie had pulled the strings. Helen stood. She's been tracking your case for years, Jamie. She knew your medical history before you even signed the consent form. The door opened a moment later, and in walked Joshua. White coat, polished shoes, hair slicked back like every strand had been individually coached into place. His smile was strained. Mr. Lee, he said. Mind if I have a word? Helen rolled her eyes and excused herself with a mutter. Drama, table for two. Joshua closed the door behind her. I'll be blunt, he said, folding his arms. I know who you are, I know what you did to Julie back in high school, and I know what you're trying to do now. I stared at him, unamused. Is this your version of bedside manners? He stepped closer. Julie's not your responsibility anymore. She has a career, a life, a tour, and she doesn't need you jeopardizing any of it. I clenched my jaw. You think dragging her into your sickness again is noble? You think guilt is love? I didn't say a word. He sneered. What's your endgame, Jamie? To win her back with pity? To pull her into your grave? I looked up slowly. You done? He raised his brows. Because if I am the reason she became a doctor, I said, voice low, then maybe I have a right to be here, and if I'm dying anyway, I might as well enjoy messing with you. He narrowed his eyes. I'll confess to her, I went on. I'll cry, beg, make her remember every kiss, every birthday, every math question she ever explained to me. And maybe, just maybe, I'll win her back. She'll dump you and marry me. Sound good? He grit his teeth. You should thank me, I snapped. If I hadn't left, she never would have looked twice at you. Then came the voice behind me. Would you? I froze. I turned slowly. Julie stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her face unreadable. Joshua stiffened. She walked in and looked directly at me. Say it. I swallowed. Say what? That you still love me, she said flatly. Go on, say it. The room went dead silent. Joshua looked between us. Julie didn't blink. I opened my mouth. My throat tightened. But I said nothing. She nodded to herself. That's what I thought. Then she turned to Joshua. Give us a moment. He hesitated, then left, shoulders tight. Julie walked up to me, eyes scanning my patchy scalp, the trembling in my fingers. She didn't speak for a while. Then she placed something on the bed beside me. Hair clippers. What is this? I asked. She sat down. You've been hiding behind that wig for weeks, she said softly. I've watched you adjust it in the mirror when you think no one's looking. I've seen the way you wince every time someone enters the room. I looked away. You're not fooling anyone. I know. Then stop pretending. She picked up the clippers, handed them to me. Shave it. I blinked. What? No. I'm not ready. She didn't wait. She reached up and cut a chunk of her own hair. The long black strands fell to the floor, silent and soft. I stared, stunned. She met my eyes. Now you can't push me away. Julie. You said you wanted to keep me safe. You said you left to protect me, but I don't need protection. I need partnership. Her hands trembled as she handed me the clippers again. Do it, she said. I shook my head. I can't, I shouldn't, this is insane. Then I'll do it myself. Another patch of hair fell to the floor. I snatched the clippers from her. And slowly, with each buzzing pass, I watched the girl I once loved become something else entirely. Not weaker, not softer, but stronger, braver, closer. She looked at her reflection in the mirror and said, "We look ridiculous." I laughed despite myself. Monk and disciple. She turned, eyes glistening, and kissed me, hard. No hesitation. Just everything we hadn't said in 10 years, pressed between lips and breath and trembling hands. When we broke apart, she rested her forehead against mine. "You're not dying alone," she whispered. Not this time. Moving in with Julie was not part of the original plan, but life, as it tends to do, made its own decisions. After another intense round of chemo left me too weak to climb stairs, my landlord politely reminded me that his son was getting married and he needed the apartment back. "You've been a great tenant," he said over the phone, "but family comes first." I understood. He gave me a generous penalty payout and wished me luck, but luck was the last thing I felt. I sat on the hospital bed, scrolling through listings I couldn't afford, my head buzzing from meds, my fingers numb from the IV. Julie glanced at my screen during her rounds and said, "Don't bother." I raised a brow. "Why?" She pulled out her phone. "You're moving in with me." I choked. "Excuse me?" "It's closer to the hospital, easier for your appointments. I already changed the door code." I opened my mouth to argue, but she was already texting someone. probably arranging a cab, probably updating the nurses, probably packing her schedule tighter to make room for me, so I said the only thing I could. Okay. Her place was exactly what I expected: clean, minimalist, warm lighting, a faint scent of green tea and textbooks. A small sofa sat under a photo wall filled with landscapes and group pictures I'd never been in. She pointed to the room on the left. That's mine. Yours is the one across. I tried to hide my nerves as I wheeled my suitcase across the hardwood floor. My wig itched under my cap. I felt like a squatter in a life that didn't belong to me. That first night, I made dinner. Rice and soup, simple. She came home late. Her bun was messy. Her hands were dry from scrubbing. She saw me dozing at the table, wig askew, soup untouched. I jerked awake as she stepped in. "You're back. Sorry. I was gonna eat, It's fine," she said, not even commenting on the crooked hairpiece. She sat. We ate. Tea was quiet, but not empty. Over the next few weeks, we settled into a rhythm. She worked insane hours. I recovered slowly. She left notes on the fridge. I left water by her bed. I'd hear her snoring softly from the other room sometimes and smile in the dark. We never talked about death, or love, or the 10 years we lost. We just existed. Until the night everything cracked. I'd just stepped out of the shower when I heard her voice in the hallway, sharp, cold, furious. I said, "Don't bring it up again, Mom." I froze. Her voice dropped, but I pressed my ear against the door. "This is my life. I'm not letting you guilt me, not this time." A pause, then, "If you can't accept him, then don't come to the wedding, don't call, don't pretend to care about my future when you tried to destroy it 10 years ago." Silence again. Then the call ended with a soft, shaking breath. I sat down on the bed, towel still around my shoulders. The guilt hit like a truck. I was dragging her down. I could feel it. The way her eyes had dark circles, the way she worked overtime and still came home to check on me. The way her mother screamed over the phone, blaming her for wasting her future on a dying man. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 2:17 a.m., I walked to the kitchen. She was at the counter, drinking water in silence. "Julie," I said. She turned. I looked at her, eyes raw, heart pounding. "You should leave." Her brow twitched. "What?" "You're burning yourself out, taking care of me, fighting your family. You're engaged to medicine, not me." Her voice tightened. "Where is this coming from?" "I overheard the call." She blinked slowly. "You were eavesdropping?" "I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did." I looked away. "Your mom's right." "Don't say that." "She said you're throwing your life away." Julie slammed her glass down. "Then what am I supposed to do? Walk away and pretend I don't love you?" I flinched. Her voice trembled. "Do you think I gave all this up for pity? That I gave up my dream, my plans, my sleep, my sanity, because I felt sorry for you?" "You gave up math," I whispered. "You wanted to study pure math." "No," she snapped. "I wanted you." I stared at her. She took a step forward, eyes blazing. "You told me once, if we drew a straight line between your school and mine, we'd always be 15 minutes apart. I believed you. I built my future around that stupid red line." I bit my lip. "You should have erased it." "I couldn't." "Why not?" "Because every time I looked at a hospital hallway, I saw your face in the waiting room." I sank to the floor. My knees gave out. "I'm scared, Julie." She knelt beside me. "I'm scared of dying. Of getting better and still losing you. Of waking up and realizing this was all temporary." Her hands gently cupped my cheeks. "I don't deserve this," I whispered. "I left you. I humiliated you. I broke you." She kissed me, soft, firm, final. Then she whispered against my lips, "Even if we're separated by death, I won't leave your side." My tears soaked her sleeve. We stayed on the floor for a long time. Two people who had already lost everything and still chose each other. Jamie rang the bell, the chemo bell, the one every patient dreams of reaching. The hospital corridor erupted into claps and cheers from nurses and other patients. Julie stood in the corner, hands clasped, smiling with silent pride, her lab coat exchanged for a sundress that fluttered like a promise of spring. Jamie grinned, pale and thinner than before, but glowing with something stronger than health, hope. He turned to her. "Didn't think I'd make it, did you?" Julie shook her head, tears threatening to spill. "I always knew, you're too stubborn to die." A few weeks later, they walked hand in hand through the wide double doors of their high school gym, now decked out for the 10-year reunion. People turned, whispers danced, the crowd parted. Julie squeezed Jamie's hand. "Ready?" Jamie chuckled. "You sure we shouldn't fake an accidental meet cute for drama?" She rolled her eyes. "We've had enough drama to last a lifetime." A classmate spotted them and gasped. "Wait, Julie and Jamie?" Heads turned, then cheers. Someone shouted, "You two got back together?" Julie raised her glass. "Correction, I made the first move." Laughter erupted around them, old friends hugged them, photos were snapped, it was loud, nostalgic and messy, but warm. Jamie hadn't felt this alive in years. Later that night, as the music slowed, Jamie stood on the makeshift stage. He cleared his throat. Everyone fell silent. He turned to Julie, her eyes widened slightly, like she already knew. "I don't have a fancy speech," he said, "and I don't know what the future looks like for me, but if I live..." He paused. He stepped down, walked to her, and took her hand. "If I live, I want to live with you." Julie gasped softly. He pulled out a simple silver ring, no diamond, no velvet box, just them. "Will you marry me?" She threw her arms around his neck. "Yes, yes, yes." The crowd erupted, glasses clinked. "So," Mion yelled, "about time!" Fast forward. Sunlight streaming through white curtains, Julie buttoning up her wedding dress, laughing nervously as her maid of honor fixed a crooked eyelash, Jamie waiting at the altar, hair grown back, nerves buzzing like live wires. The ceremony was small, close friends, a few doctors, some former classmates. He cried as she walked toward him. She smiled through tears when he fumbled the vows. They kissed before the officiant said, "You may now." They ran barefoot across the lawn afterward, laughing, the wind carrying her veil behind her like a comet tail. Montage. A series of snapshots across time, Julie and Jamie posing awkwardly in front of the Eiffel Tower, wind wrecking their hair. Jamie pretending to be terrified on a roller coaster while Julie screamed in delight. Their first home, a cluttered apartment with peeling wallpaper, yet filled with warmth. A wall in the hallway, full of photos, old and new, high school, hospital, travels. Julie sneaking a kiss while Jamie cooked. Him burning the eggs in the process. Laughter echoing in their kitchen at 2 a.m. Snow angels, cherry blossoms, rainy days on the porch with matching mugs. Aging, softly, together. Jamie lived longer than any prognosis had dared to guess. For 50 years, he lived with Julie, loved Julie, wrote beside her, traveled with her, grew older with her. Until one day, his body whispered the inevitable. The cancer returned, this time, more quietly, like an old ghost knocking once more. Julie held his hand as he lay in bed, surrounded by framed memories and soft sunlight. "I'm not scared anymore," he whispered. "I know," she whispered back. He smiled. And then, gently, he was gone. Julie buried him beneath an old oak tree in a quiet meadow. Each year on his birthday, she returned, alone, carrying two things: a thermos of black coffee, like he used to make. An envelope. Jamie had left her letters. One for every year she came back. The first was simple. "If you're reading this, then I'm not there to make you laugh anymore, but maybe this letter can try. Remember that time I tried to ride a unicycle to impress you? Worst pelvic bruise of my life." Each letter followed a theme: memories, jokes, gentle check-ins. Sometimes advice: buy yourself the lemon cake, don't share it. Sometimes love: every day I lived longer than expected was because I saw you waking up beside me. As the years passed, the stack of letters dwindled. Julie aged, but her devotion never did. Then came the final letter, on her 73rd visit. The envelope was heavier. Inside was a folded note and a Polaroid. Their wedding day. Her in his arms. The letter read, "This is the last one, Willow. If you've read this far, you've done enough. You don't need any more letters. You don't owe me your tears, your yearly visits, or your silence when the world feels too loud. But I'll still be here, waiting, in every wind that rattles the trees, in every star that flickers after midnight, in every line you ever wrote after reading mine. You found me once in this life, and you will again. Because two souls, like ours, don't separate forever. We're a straight line, 15 minutes apart at most. See you soon. Love, Jamie." Julie placed the letter back into the envelope, her hands trembling. She looked up at the tree. "I'll see you soon." She sat beside his grave, her arms full of letters, her heart full of peace, and she closed her eyes. Forever. Final line, two souls always destined to reunite. It was only a matter of time.